Barter. Before any form of money existed, people paid for things by trading goods directly with one another. A farmer with extra grain might exchange it for a neighbor's livestock, or a weaver might trade cloth for tools. This kind of exchange dates back to around 6000 BCE in Mesopotamia, one of the earliest known centers of organized trade. It worked well enough in small communities, but it had a built-in limitation. For a trade to happen, both people had to want exactly what the other person had. A toolmaker who needed grain could only trade with a farmer who happened to need tools at that exact moment. Economists later called this the double coincidence of wants, and it became one of the biggest obstacles to trade as communities grew larger and more complex, a gap that pushed people to start looking for something everyone would accept, no matter what they were trading for: commodity money. As trade expanded, people began settling on specific objects that almost everyone agreed had value, so they didn't need to rely on both sides wanting the same thing. Cowrie shells became one of the most widely used forms of this kind of money, appearing across Africa, Asia, and the Pacific for centuries. In ancient Rome, soldiers were partly paid in salt, a substance valuable enough that it gave rise to the word salary. In parts of Central America, cacao beans were used in markets the way coins would be used later. These systems worked, but they weren't perfectly consistent. A shell or a bean could vary slightly in size or quality, and there was no guaranteed way to standardize their worth across long distances, which meant something more uniform and harder to fake was still missing: coinage. The first standardized metal coins were minted under King Alyattes of Lydia in what is now Western Turkey around 600 BCE. Each coin carried a stamped image, often a lion, which served as a guarantee of its weight and purity. This meant people no longer had to weigh or test metal every time they made a trade. Coinage spread quickly through Greek, Persian, and later Roman economies, becoming the backbone of ancient trade for centuries. But coins were heavy and difficult to transport in large amounts, especially as merchants began trading across greater distances, a problem that would eventually be solved by something far lighter: paper money. In Tang Dynasty China, around the 7th century, merchants started using promissory notes instead of carrying strings of heavy coins over long trade routes. By the Song Dynasty, around 1023 CE, the government took this a step further and issued the world's first officially backed paper currency. It took several more centuries for the idea to reach Europe and the rest of the world, but once it did, paper money slowly became the standard. For a long time, though, this paper wasn't valuable on its own. It represented a fixed amount of gold held somewhere in a vault, a link that would eventually be cut for good: fiat currency. For most of the 20th century, currencies around the world were tied to gold, meaning paper money could, in theory, be exchanged for a set amount of it. That link was broken in 1971 when United States President Richard Nixon ended the dollar's convertibility to gold, an event now known as the Nixon shock. From that point forward, money held value not because of a physical asset backing it, but because governments guaranteed and enforced its worth. This shift laid the groundwork for currency to eventually exist without any physical form at all, starting with something small enough to fit in a wallet: plastic money. The credit card was introduced in 1950 by Frank McNamara after an embarrassing dinner where he forgot his wallet and had to call his wife to cover the bill. To avoid a repeat, he created the Diners Club card, one of the first cards accepted at multiple businesses. Magnetic stripe technology followed in the 1960s, introduced by IBM, making cards easier to process electronically. Chip cards arrived in the 1990s under what became known as the EMV standard, designed to reduce fraud. More recently, tap-to-pay technology removed the need to swipe or insert a card at all, and that same wireless convenience was about to move off plastic entirely. Digital payments. Online banking gained real traction through the 1990s, allowing people to manage money without stepping into a physical bank branch. PayPal launched in 1998 and became one of the first widely used digital wallets. In India, the introduction of UPI in 2016 pushed things even further, allowing instant transfers between bank accounts using nothing more than a phone number or a scanned code. Money had fully moved from something physical to something digital, existing only as numbers passed between accounts. But one more shift was still coming, one that would remove banks from the process altogether: crypto and CBDC. In 2008, someone using the name Satoshi Nakamoto published a paper describing Bitcoin, a currency designed to operate without banks or any central authority. It launched the following year, shaped directly by the financial crisis that had just shaken public trust in traditional banking systems. Thousands of other cryptocurrencies followed in the years after. In response, governments around the world began developing their own digital currencies, known as central bank digital currencies, aiming to combine the speed of crypto with the oversight of traditional monetary systems. Today, all of these forms still exist at the same time. Coins and paper notes are still used for everyday purchases. Cards and digital wallets handle most transactions in cities and online. Cryptocurrency runs entirely outside traditional banks, and central bank digital currencies are still being tested by governments around the world. Every version of money that ever existed hasn't fully disappeared. It just added another layer on top of the last one. Which raises a question no one can really answer yet. Is there a next form of money still waiting to be invented? One we haven't even imagined yet?